The tales of Russian supercomputers. Russian doctors and paramedics are seeking justice, but at the wrong place. Russia's year of family starts and instantly brings questions. For the first time, Putin admits that Ukrainian lands were stolen, conquered. Russian church wants to ban Valentine's Day. Far north of Russia is seeing protests. Russian felons get conned, literally. The propaganda claims Russia created Uzbeks only 100 years ago. In the biggest news of the week this week is about Russian government taking real steps on stealing property of those citizens who fled Russia. Welcome to another Crazy Friday Russian news update. Howdy, howdy, friends. If you're here for the first time, my name is Konstantin, and welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Every Friday, I give you crazy news update, straight out of the grandiose mad circus that Russia has become. But first things first, please remember that there's no such absurdity that could not be realized in Russia these days. Well, let's jump straight to the first news. And it comes from Vladimir Putin, Russian president. You know, Vladimir Putin is so full of news. There are two news, the big news and the small news. And the big news says that the guy is deep. When we think that the guy cannot surprise us any longer, he does. And he didn't disappoint us this week either. And the second news is that Vladimir Putin had decided that one of Russia's biggest problems is lack of capacity of Russian supercomputers. Vladimir Putin just ordered the government to make plans and execute plans to increase the capacity of Russian supercomputers by March 1st of 2024. Oops, the article is right there. You see how deep Putin is? When we think that Russia's problems are twisted values, war that's it's waging on Ukraine, failing economy, you name it, there are so many problems, or so we think. Putin looks deeper, much deeper than that. The supercomputers. I am ashamed to admit, folks, but I thought that Russia didn't even have supercomputers. Moreover, I thought Russia doesn't produce regular computers. You know, the weakling computers, the microcomputers that we use in everyday life. It doesn't even produce toy computers. They all come from China. But it turns out that there is something out there, somewhere in the depth of Ural Mountains in taiga, there are supercomputers. And our problem is that they don't have enough capacity. Let's increase the capacity, and Russia's problems will be solved. Just like that. Ruski mir, rejoice. And how exactly do they increase the capacity? Oh, that's the easy part. More taxpayers' money is needed. You see, Putin said multiple times that Russian economy is doing great. Poverty in the country decreasing. Real-life wages grow every single week. Russian taxpayers are swimming in rubles. And the government, this will take a tiny little bit of this excess, abundant excess. It's like trillion rubles. But for a good cause, to increase the capacity of supercomputers. And you want us to show the result of the spendings? You want to see the improved supercomputers? What? That's impossible. It's classified. But just trust our word. We wouldn't lie to you, we're the government. And, Why are you asking in the first place? Are you a foreign agent? Who are you working for? Our spendings of your taxes is none of your business. Ask again and go to Gulag. Look, there's a fresh law that allows us to do that. Woohoo! I am having my popcorn right here and waiting to see the new Russian supercomputers. Yes. The next news comes from the doctors and the paramedics of Sverdlovskaya province of Russia. You know, the Urals. That's where the many Russian riches are. Very rich land. But I'm not going to tell you much. Please see for yourself.
Президенту Российской Федерации Путину Владимиру Владимировичу, министру здравоохранения РФ Мурашко, губернатору Свердловской области Куйбышеву Евгению Владимировичу, министру здравоохранения Свердловской области Карлову, его главного врача Леоновой Наталье Валерьевне. Коллективное обращение сотрудников отделения скорой медицинской помощи ГАУ СОЦ ГБ город Кушево. В связи с нехваткой врачей-специалистов в поликлинике все вызова колл-центр передает ОСМП, поэтому мы вынуждены выезжать на так называемые терапевтические вызова. По мнению руководства, мы обязаны назначать лечение пациентам, могут лишить премий из-за нарушения по таким вызовам. Также в связи с отсутствием в медицинской организации санитарного транспорта отделение СМП выполняет обязанности по перевозке стационарных больных. Все это приводит к значительному росту и без того огромной нагрузки. Решить эту проблему можно только увеличением численности медицинского персонала. А это невозможно без достойной оплаты труда, а также грамотным разграничением обязанностей между отделением скорой помощи и поликлиникой. Между тем, в течение последних лет нам фактически урезали нашу заработную плату. Одновременно с незначительным повышением оклада у нас отсутствует надбавка за стаж, а также мизерная доплата за работу в ночное время. Она составляет 25% от оклада. Мы требуем увеличить количество общепрофильных выездных бригад до 5 и сотрудников в штатном расписании в соответствии с федеральным нормативом. Обеспечить комплектование выездных бригад полным составом медработников в соответствии с нормами приказа 388.
They are begging Vladimir Putin to help them to be heard at the local government and local medical authorities, to force the authorities to work according to the law, to fully staff hospitals, to pay the doctors what they're promised, to work according to the rules. Now, doctors cannot do that. That's why they are appealing to Putin himself. My dear doctors, Vladimir Putin would help you, but he's too busy now solving Russia's biggest problem: lack of capacity of Russian supercomputers. Sorry, tough it up and deal with the problems yourself. The next news comes from His Excellency Dark Lord himself again. On January 23rd, Vladimir Putin officially started the Year of the Family in Russia. He took part in the All-Russian Family Forum called Family is the Loved Ones. Family is the loved ones. But now, do I understand correctly that the man who is divorced, who has been divorced in 14 years, who's been hiding his daughters in an undisclosed location, who was seen with his family on public last time, somewhere in like 2004, around 20 years ago, teaching us, Russian people, of family values? The divorced man without family is teaching us family values? Well, it's like a driving instructor who had his driver's license revoked 20 years ago for driving drunk and causing accident, and he's teaching us safe driving. Ooh, and no one around me is having a slightest doubt about Putin preaching family values. Am I the only one again? You know, folks, it's really hard. Sometimes I feel absolutely insane. Am I the only one seeing that? The guy who doesn't have a family, who destroyed his family, who divorced, and he's trying to convince everyone of family values and how great they are. I feel insane. Please answer one simple question in the comments. Am I insane or are you with me? Thank you so much. Comment, please. Whew. The next news also comes from Russian President Vladimir Putin. And that's, nothing less of a sensation. For the first time, Vladimir Putin admitted that Russia conquered territories of Ukraine. I quote Russian President, "The attempts to reach a peace agreement, with Ukraine currently are doomed to failure as long as the Ukraine and its allies insist on Russia's renunciation of conquered territories." I've said it in the live, unquote, I've said it in the live streams many times before, that Russia conquered Ukrainian territories, stole them, annexed them, but Putin had never officially admitted that before. And he just did last week. Before, Putin had always called those lands liberated from the Nazis. You see how things changed? Before liberated from the Nazis and now conquered. If we apply regular logic, nothing special, nothing extraordinary, just logic. Then it appears that when you conquer something, conquer lands, it means you are at war. You're taking certain actions to conquer. Special military operations don't conquer land. They are short in and out military operations. When land is conquered, right, I think it's a war. Please let me know down below in the comments if I'm right again or if I'm insane. Does this logic work for you? Or again, am I the only one seeing that? And it's nothing like, it's being hidden from the news in Russia. It's all over the news. But so far, I'm the only person who's asked this question. So it is war after all. And Russian Criminal Code has a special Criminal Code article for unleashing an aggressive war. Article 353. And Russian president just admitted that he violated the article of the Criminal Code. It's becoming interesting. Again, let's get our popcorn ready. More popcorn, more! And watch closely. Perhaps something interesting will come out of it. The next news comes from the coldness of Russian snow. Winter, general frost, general winter. You might have heard the story of the unfortunate Russian cat called Twix. Nice little cat. Twix was being transported by its owner in a cage on a train, regular Russian train. Somehow it got away from the cage and started wandering around the railroad car. That passenger car, that railroad car's attendant saw Twix, called the passengers, who asked the question out loud whose cat it was. The owner missed the question. So the attendant didn't have any responses and thought it was a stray cat somehow made it onto the train. Then the train stopped and the attendant released Twix into the wild. In other words, he threw it off the train. It happened in the middle of Russian nowhere in January, and the temperature outside was 20 below Celsius or so. And the inevitable happened. Twix froze to death. Oh boy, it made the news all over Russia. The main news of the week. Twix this, Twix that, cruelty with animals and so forth. Literally everywhere. All major TV channels, all newspapers Russian railroad company, the only company in Russia, the monopolist, RZD, they started announcing changes in how the attendants would handle pets, transporting pets, and so forth. There was criminal investigation launched against this a woman who accidentally, I guess, I don't know, released twigs into the wild. It was the major news, and it still is. It's lingering out there. And I don't really understand why. Hundreds of thousands of people, men, women, children, died in Ukraine, were killed, and somehow it never makes into Russian news. And the unfortunate cat Twigs died, and hey, all over the news. But what do I know? Twig's death in endless Russian snow is not the news I want to tell you. If you think the rail cars attendants throwing cats off the trains is bad, it gets worse, much worse. Last week in Perm region, which is in the very heart of the Urals, if you look at the map, Russia's map, it's right in the middle. It's cold. It's really, really cold there, wilderness. A rail car attendant dropped passengers off the train in the middle of nowhere, in taiga, 51 kilometers or 35 miles from the nearest railroad station. Just like in a train like this, in a situation like this, the passengers had to walk through the woods toward the rail station in the middle of the night. About half an hour later, the passengers nearly froze to death, and they were picked up by passing by freight train who had to make a stop for these people. And that's how they reached their destination, a railroad station, Chernushka, where several unfortunate passengers had to go to a local hospital for medical help due to severe hypothermia and frostbite. It turned out the attendant confused the arrival time at the train station as the train was running behind the schedule. I don't even know what this railroad car attendant would have to drink, and that had to be pretty darn hard, okay, to make such a mistake. And the passengers? How did they get off the train in taiga? Perhaps they were blind, but then how were they able to walk towards the station? Now, the strangest thing is that this news about passengers thrown off the train in taiga at night, basically left to die, was barely noticed. Death of the cat named Twigs was discussed by tens of millions of Russians, and there was plenty of empathy shown. You should have seen the storm of different articles and comments and likes and all of that, But nothing was said about the passengers. Human beings, Russian citizens, left to die in taiga in a very similar situation, basically in the same situation, in the same place. Twigs, for goodness sake. And the passengers. And most who heard the story of the passengers, they just shrugged their shoulders saying, oh well. Oh well. Oh well. And that's all you need to know of the price of human life in Russia these days, and how much Russians have empathy left. The price of human life is, oh well. And the next news comes from Kirill, the head of Russian Orthodox Church, the almighty powerful guy. He called for the ban of Valentine's Day. According to the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, this holiday is a propaganda of relationships that have no place for true love. You know, I think the Russian church is looking at the wrong direction. It should leave Valentine's Day alone. Instead, it needs to look inside Russia and to reevaluate its values. Because there's clearly something wrong in the society where hundreds of thousands of people die, killing thousands of their neighbors in the process, and no one cares, or no one seems to care. They just shrug their shoulders and go, oh well. You won't fix that by banning Valentine's Day. No. You are definitely looking at the wrong place. Folks, if you're liking today's news update, please help me spread it by doing a couple things. First, would you please hit the like button? I'd really appreciate that. Then, would you make repost of this in your social media accounts? But what really works like magic is when you comment. Please comment, say, ask me something or say. And if you have nothing to comment, please leave a couple lines of something nice, something pleasant when I will read that, and I will. It's going to be very pleasant. So thank you so very much. Thank you again. Let's jump next to the next news. The next news comes from Yakutia, Russia's far north. On 24th of January, there were protests. In Yakutsk, the capital city of Yakutia province, about 500 men came to the main square after the murder of their 26-year-old Yakutian countryman by a native of Tajikistan, a foreigner. Well, this what came out of it. As you see, it's basically fairly peaceful crowd, and the only sin they're committing is they're getting together. And of course, Russian government doesn't like people getting together because, hey, you never know what might happen. So police moved on to the protesters, and look what happened at the end. You can see that Russian women swearing, screaming in terror because there's a mass arrest going on of these peaceful protesters. They're running away, and the cops are running, catching them. And look, there are so many people got arrested, and they're getting packed into a bus. And they're saying, what did they do? It's not good. The police moved on to the protesters. Many were arrested, and the crowd dispersed after a few hours. Local authorities were afraid of people, as the memories of what happened in Bashkortostan 2 weeks ago are still fresh all over Russia. So Yakutia authorities took precautions. They decided to shut off means of communications. They started blocking the popular messengers, Telegram and WhatsApp, so people would be left with no means of talking to each other and sharing information. And the federal authorities also joined. Roskomnadzor, internet watchdog in Russia, started blocking the messengers in the entire Russia's far east part of the country. People reported messengers malfunctioning in Primorsky and province, Khabarovsky province, Yakutia, Sakhalin, and Amur provinces. The messengers were only available with VPNs. The authorities of Yakutia were actually honest about it. They explained the failure of messengers and mobile internet by preventative work coordinated with Roskomnadzor. Problems in WhatsApp in Russia began in connection with a rally in Yakutia. And you know what? There are still quite a few skeptics out there who think Russian government would never do that. Many things. Oh, they would never confiscate your property. Oh, they would never shut off your mobile internet. Oh, they would never steal your money. They would never do that. And of course, there are skeptics out there who say they would never do that. They would never shut off Telegram and WhatsApp. Heard it so many times. Well, there you have it now. And it's official. The next news comes from Russian prisons. It's an open information that Russian government has continued what Yevgeny Prigozhin started some 18 months ago, recruiting convicted felons doing time in Russian prisons and sending them to the front lines in Ukraine. Well, check this out. You might remember this scene. That's actually the man himself, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who originally started recruiting felons, murderers, rapists, and so forth in Russian prisons. Actually, he took videos of himself doing that. He was very proud of that, and that's one of the pictures. Crime committed doesn't actually matter. It's actually the worse the crime, the better to the armed forces. There are thousands of murderers, rapists, child molesters currently released from prisons and fighting in Ukraine. There are even cannibals. Yes, confirmed cases. Good Russian soldiers. Well, those convicted felons are up to a big surprise now. A huge surprise. A life-changing surprise, really. The conditions for sending Russian prisoners to Ukraine have changed. Previously, those convicted, even for the most violent and most horrendous crimes, were to be released after 6 months from the military contract with government and come back home with clean criminal record. Pardoned by the Russian president himself. And he did pardon every single criminal. Imagine rapists, murderers, child molesters, cannibals coming back home with clean record. Oh. Now, things have changed. Instead of a pardon from President Putin, now the convicted felons receive only a conditional release. No official information as of today, but there's plenty of rumors and stories from relatives of prisoners and the convicted felons themselves. You can't really disregard all these stories. There is truth in them. So it turns out that prisoners now sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense for 1 year instead of 6 months, as before, and these contracts will get extended automatically until the end of the war. It wouldn't surprise me much if Russian government would simply dispose of all prisoners or soldiers, whatever you want to call them, after all a good Russian senator is seriously discussing plans to exterminate 29 million Russian citizens who disagree with Vladimir Putin. Okay, 29 million Russians, regular Russians, 20%. What will they do with the prisoners, released from prisons? Just think about it. Or imagine this situation. Let's say that the Russian government lets them out, the ones who survive, and they all come back home with clean criminal records, with many trophy guns. Holy mackerel! Imagine chaos Russia will descend into. Folks, I'm telling you, that's not looking good. The next news is I don't know how to comment this. Watch it. It's TV channel called Россия 1, Russia 1. It's Russian propaganda at its finest. It's a major channel, second in the country, second largest in coverage. Over 100 million Russians in Russia and watch it, and around 100 million abroad watch this channel. Well, check this out.
Трансгендеры в США начинают сколачивать боевые группы. И в частности, сегодня получила развитие новость о том, что некий трансгендер из Нью-Гэмпшира, некий господин Смит или госпожа Смит, мы уж не знаем, либо оно по фамилии Смит, создает стрелковую ЛГБТ-группу, которая будет отстреливать американских натуралов, если произойдут какие-то конфликты. Понимаете, вот насколько великая американская цивилизация, сияющий град на холме, который учит нас демократии, учит вот о том, как должен быть устроен мир. Но сегодня фактически будут уже происходить и вооруженные, возможно, столкновения. В этом плане мой призыв к ФБР в США, слушайте, ну обеспечьте хотя бы свою внутреннюю безопасность беспощадной борьбой с теми, кто берет в руки оружие, пусть это разрешено соответствующими поправками к Конституции.
You know, folks, I must have watched this video like 15 times, and I can't help laughing. I think this is a masterpiece of Russian propaganda. Actually, the next time someone asks you, what is Russian propaganda? Remember this video, okay? It was shown in a prime time, in a prime channel for, I don't know, tens and tens of millions of Russians. Why do they show things like that? I have a few theories. First theory is that the scriptwriters, because that guy was clearly reading the script, okay? He was making pauses and he was looking down. So perhaps he was seeing the text for the first time. That's also possible. So the scriptwriters, they were simply smoking something. Or another theory is these people who are in charge of the show, they were making bets with each other, how far they can go unnoticed. Hey, let's bet $100 that I can say something like that from New Hampshire. Okay, so, or theory number 3 is that, and this is scarier, is that Russian government, Russian propaganda is actually trying to find the limit of how far it can go. The limit of how far it can go so people will be buying that stuff. And people keep on buying and buying and believing, and it seems like there's no limit. I mean, who would believe stuff like that? I lived right next to New Hampshire. I'm gonna say that at the end of the stream. New Hampshire, you know, I lived right next to the border in Maine, New Hampshire border, state border. And New Hampshire, along with Maine, are two most safest places in the world you probably can find. Nicest, most beautiful, nicest people. It's Russian propaganda. Anyway, let's jump to the next news. Before I do that, if at this point you're asking yourself how I can help the channel, that's easy. The best way is to hit the like button again, to make a comment, or to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, or become channel's patron at patreon.com. Either way would be absolutely fantastic and much appreciated. The links are down below. Thank you so very much. And the next news comes from the same place, Bashkortostan. That's a Russian province. Remember my stream a couple days ago of mass protests in Bashkortostan in the town of Muynak? No, not Muynak. Baymak. I'm sorry. Baymak. I made a dedicated live stream about that. I'm going to put the link right over here. Local government and Siloviki negotiated with the crowd, fairly peaceful, you know, and promised the crowd that no protesters would be arrested or harassed after the crowd dispersed. You know, remember in the stream, I said that the government lied. Because the government, Russian government, always lies. And guess what? Of course it did. Check out what happened there. This is a very short, how do I call this? Very short scene. But someone is very scared, but filming far away of how they are arresting, mass arresting again. See that bus over there? Okay. Bus, and there's a bunch of Siloviki, and they're just grabbing people. So, packing the locals into buses. And that's not it. In Baimak and in Ufa, dozens of people complained that their relatives were arrested after the protests. Many people have fled the province, and I've heard of at least 2 people fleeing the country, running away from arrests. Many were fined, and there have been criminal investigations open against a few people. And this, folks, what happens when you trust Russian government. One more news is straight from the heart of Russian propaganda, from a major TV channel, a wide-known propagandist Andrei Norkin's program. This news is hilarious and sad at the same time, and scary. It's so shocking that even Mr. Propaganda Norkin wouldn't believe his ears. Instead of telling you, let me show you the video again.
Вот смотрите, как появился Казахстан. На самом деле сначала называлась Казакская ССР, да, в составе РСФСР. То есть вообще никаких казахов не было. Потом внутри Казахской ССР создали Киргизскую ССР. А потом взяли и вытащили, ее отделили от РСФСР. То есть там настолько волюнтаристски принимались решения о формировании наций, например, узбеков никогда не существовало до революции. Не было такого названия этнического.
Look at this guy, the host. He goes, what do you mean? And his eyes like $2 silver. He's like, what? He's probably thinking, wow, I've heard a lot of crazy stuff, but I haven't heard this stuff this crazy, you know?
Взяли, создали из нескольких среднеазиатских народов узбеков. То же самое создавалось... Ну, кто такие азербайджанцы? Нет такой национальности азербайджанцев.
So, according to this Russian expert, Uzbeks as a nation did not exist until 100 years ago, when the Russians made them Uzbeks, created them out of thin air. I've taught, and I've been taught, and I have taught myself, others, completely the opposite. You know, Uzbeks are absolutely magnificent nation with a wonderful language that has 4,000 plus year history. It's one of the oldest nations in the world. At one point, a few hundred years ago, the Timurid Empire, which is a modern Uzbekistan pretty much, conquered the entire known world and ruled it over for about 150 years. And it's well documented. If you come to Uzbekistan, you will see, I don't know, the monuments that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds years old. And the Uzbek language, there are books that date, I don't know, 1,000 years old, something like that. And this guy sitting in Moscow, Russia, he's probably never been to Uzbekistan. And he's saying the same about Azerbaijan. Used to be a part of Iran a long time ago. There are 27 million Azerbaijanians live in Iran, by the way. And this guy tells us that Uzbeks did not exist and were created by Russians 100 years ago. And Russians created Uzbek language then too? Used to be... not only I was shocked, Norkin was also shocked. No comments needed here. I had the courtesy of spreading this information in Uzbekistan among many people, including the Uzbeks I know. They should be informed of how Russian historians and experts in propaganda, media people, think of them. You know, that only proves the point of another guy who a couple weeks ago said that Russia should annex Uzbekistan. This program kind of solidified that other guy speaking. It turns out it was not only his personal opinion, okay, but other people think so. Other people think that Uzbekistan doesn't have a right to exist. After all, it was created by mighty Russians 100 years ago. Same for Azerbaijan. You know what? All the Uzbeks who I showed them this information, oh boy, they were not happy. They are not taking it lightly. And let me finish the stream with this last news coming from one of Russia's most influential senators, Andrei Lugovoy. His name might ring the bell. He is the fellow who is wanted in the UK and pretty much in the entire West for the murder of Alexander Litvinenko. Remember that guy? Long time ago. Well, the British, as far as I understand, have bulletproof evidence against Lugovoy, but as soon as he committed his act, he flew to Russia and he was made a senator. So he spoke this past week, and again, instead of telling you, I will show you his speech, and you pay very close attention, please.
Вот смотрите, как появился Казахстан. На самом деле...
I apologize.
Вот смотрите, как появился Казахстан. На самом деле сначала назывался... Вот смотрите, как появился Казахстан. На самом деле сначала называлась Казахская ССР, да? В составе...
Difficulties. This guy right here.
Речь идет о том, что если ты, собственно говоря, публично призываешь к тому, что...
So this is Andrei Litvinenko himself, and there are, his powerful colleagues right behind him. Okay, and he's, just watch what he said.
Чтобы нарушить национальную безопасность нашей страны, то помимо того, что ты должен немножко посидеть в тюрьме, ты должен лишиться своей квартиры, своего дома, своих денег и любого другого имущества, которым ты вправе пользоваться. Сидеть там, убежав из страны, конечно, легко и приятно. Но учитывая, что многие пользуются теми активами, которые у них есть, и деньгами, и недвижимостью, сдают в аренду квартиры и дома, владеют акциями, владеют долями в отдельных предприятиях, для того, чтобы там жить комфортно, потому что там-то они не нужны. И мы теперь знаем о том, что у многих возникают проблемы, собственно говоря, как себя вести. Но они, конечно, живут на те деньги, которые поступают им из России. Не правда ли интересная ситуация? Но мы этой ситуации не допустим. Поэтому любой тот, который с этого момента попытается нанести ущерб своей родине, своей стране и гражданам Российской Федерации, лишится всего и подохнет там, за пределами нашей страны, как последняя собака.
So you understand what they mean, damage the motherland, because they're talking about anyone who damages motherland, who harms motherland. It's simply a person who lives abroad and speaks against Vladimir Putin, speaks against current government. That's a right that every Russian citizen has, according to Russian constitution, but not according to Russian senators. So they want to steal everything from us. All private property we own, real estate, bank accounts, personal belongings, everything. The official reason is that so we would not harm motherland being away from the motherland. How can we harm the motherland being away from the motherland? Well, the real reason is different. You see, we got away. We aren't under government's control any longer. We are free to move. We are free to go anywhere we want. We're free to speak anything we want. We are not under control anymore, and they hate it. And they're absolutely mad about that. And they want to take revenge on us. They want to destroy us. They want to make us lose everything. They don't want us to be happy. They want us to die, as the senator says, to die as lowest stray dogs. They simply want to take revenge on us. They don't let us go, but do everything to grind us to dust. And that's exactly what mafia does. You know? Being Russian these days isn't exactly easy or pleasant. You don't want to be seen in many countries. Russians are banned to enter such countries. In some places, they let Russians visit, but in many cases, on many occasions, you are looked down upon. You are looked at in a way that is not well, if you know what I mean. And that attitude is very felt if you're Russian. Not in any way I'm complaining. I'm not complaining because I understand that is fair. We in Russia are all guilty of what has happened, and we all bear personal responsibility. Myself included. I probably bear even more responsibility than the others because I was more informed than the others, but I was inactive. The justice is being served. Okay, so again, I'm humbly accepting everything, what's going on. But, you know, thing of this, not only the world rejects us, but our own country hates us now. And not just rejects, it tries to take everything we own and have us die as stray dogs, our own place. It hurts when others do it, but you know what? It hurts triple when Russians, our own people, are doing it to us. For one simple reason. They can't stand the chance that we're free now, that we have run away. You know, in this stream a little early, I said that I lived in Maine for a long time, right next to a state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire, as the locals say. And that's one state with freedom-loving folks. You know, fantastic people. Very, very warm, very welcoming. Do you know what their car license plates say? Live free or die. And, you know, when I visited New Hampshire quite often, and there were guests in Maine all the time, I didn't understand what it meant. It was just the license plate. Was just a line on the license plate. Live free or die. Well, the state was a little strange because they didn't have sales tax, okay? The folks of New Hampshire got together and decided they not to pay the sales tax, okay? But that was it. That was my understanding. I start understanding the true meaning of it just now. Live free or die. I wish Russians would understand that too. Because with the way this is going, they have no choice. Their government absolutely hates them. And it hates triple those who get away. The least it can do to those is to steal everything they own in Russia and to leave them dry, starving to death anywhere that they currently reside. Russian government will simply not stop now. Look how far it's come already. And that's just the beginning. They will get to the point when all Russians will be forced to either live in Gulag or die. Now they consider those who say something aloud or disagree with Russian propaganda enemies and will steal everything from them. But the next step will be they will consider those who simply choose not to live inside Russia, and perhaps to keep quiet. Everyone who leaves Russia, they will consider the enemies, and leaving Russia will be considered treason. And that will be automatic criminal case, confiscation of, entire private properties and things like that. So this is the moment of truth for many millions of Russians to live free or die. And that's a personal decision of every single one of them. This is the moment of truth. They are to decide to live free or die. Folks, this is it for the news update today. I suggest now you check out another video I made documenting how Russia is freezing this winter and what's happening. The link is right here. Thank you so very much. I will see you soon.